Hello, my name is Rich Howard, owner of Architectural Builders Supply. This video is to bring you a closer look at the Pemko. This is their part number 101B in a polished. We call this a 101PB because it's 101 brass or architectural bronze, but we call it PB for polished brass. This is a piece of solid architectural bronze. It's an alloy. It's typical. This is what material like this is made of in our industry. It's architectural bronze is an alloy of 4 primary components. People just call it, its street name is brass, just solid brass. I would refer to it as architectural bronze because that's what it's called in our industry, but you can call it brass. We're going to call this brass. So this is a piece of solid brass basically that has had a polished finish on it. This is, what is this? This is what we'd call a threshold cap, or it could be just a threshold. It could be an item that you use independently and on its own. It can be an item that you put on top of an existing threshold. Regardless of where you would end up using this, standalone or on top of an existing threshold where you literally attach it to the top of it, you are wanting to bring into the application the concept of an interlock. The 101 is a interlocking style threshold cap, or just a threshold. It will come with a J-hook like this. If you use your imagination, you can see why we call it that. Okay, and the principle of this item is that when the door closes, this is nailed to the bottom of the door. It seals mechanically just like that. Okay, that's the entire concept and principle of this. Okay, let's take some basic dimensional properties of these parts and then we'll talk about what you would use this for specifically. Overall width of the 101, about 1 1/16 or 1 1/8 it looks like. Overall height appears to be about 5/16. We'll look at the drawing and see what it actually comes up as. The overall width of the J-hook looks like it's about 1 inch. Yeah, maybe 15/16. Then the amount of the hook that is free nailed to the bottom of the door is about 5/8 of an inch. It's very thin, roll-formed brass, again, some architectural bronze, extremely thin. You know, probably 40 thousandths, something like that. I'm going to take a measurement of that just so that you know what it is. Oh, it's way thinner than that. Way thinner. I don't know what I was thinking. It's about 15-16 thousandths, so extremely thin. If you took a 64th of an inch and you cut that in 4, you divided that by 4, a 64th is what you're dealing with on that. Let's see here, a 16th would be 60 thousandths. If you took a 16th and you cut that in, that'd be a 64th of an inch is what that measures, so extremely thin. The other dimension that's important is the height of the, what I kind of refer to as the bird's mouth. You can see right in there, you probably have right to about, you know, maybe 1/8 of an inch from the top here down to the center line of the area where the lip of the threshold is going to engage. And that's important because people need to know, hey, at what height do I want to trim my door to? You know, what am I actually doing in terms of a net door height? The width you already know, but it's the height that's going to prove to be a little bit more of an interesting thought experiment. I would like to get a little bit better idea on what that should be. Going to be about 3/8 of an inch. It's going to be something right in that range. 7/16 perhaps. Yeah, 7/16 would be a good. I would not exceed 7/16, nor would I go below 3/8 of an inch. So that's where I would be on that dimension. So let's talk about now where you use this and why you might want to use a 101 interlocking threshold cap. Let's do that now. If you've not hit subscribe yet, we would very much appreciate if you did, and hopefully you're enjoying this video. Now let's get back to it. So a threshold cap, again, is used to bring an interlock concept to an existing threshold. I also have people that say, very unusual, but once every 5 years, someone will call and will describe exactly the circumstances where the 101 works perfectly. They'll say, I want a threshold that is interlock, and it has to be extremely small. I only have 1.5 inches to work in. Something in that range is the bottom line. And once in a great while, someone calls and describes exactly where this works. Now, if you have an existing threshold and you want to add an interlock principle to it, a 101B would certainly be one way to go about doing that. And that scenario is when someone has an existing application and they want to provide an interlock, whether it be that application or an exterior opening with an existing threshold. The question becomes is why add an interlock? Well, the reason people want it is because those who request it have encountered it in the past, and they know how effective of a mechanical seal that makes right there. Okay, that goes a long way to prevent driving rain, no doubt. Driving particulate, like think the Southwest where you've got sand. It also helps absolutely eliminate the possibility of encroachment through the underside of the door from insects, reptiles, things of that nature. Not such a problem in Chicago in winter that you'll have, anything crawling underneath your door, but that's not the case everywhere. Here in Southwest Florida, there's all kinds of critters that get around, and they're always seeking cooler temperatures. In the American Southwest, I've had customers say, I need to have a interlock because I put my boot on one time and there was a scorpion in my boot. Now, interlocking weather stripping is 19th century technology. It literally is. Whether it be roll-formed brass or zinc-coated steel, it's extremely effective at the just mentioned ways to prevent infiltration. It's obviously not very good from an R-value perspective. You have metal touching metal, there's no doubt, but it works extremely effectively. Now, the situation where you're not adding interlocking functionality to an existing threshold, where the client called in the former scenario where they wanted the smallest threshold possible, that application actually is really typical for a office, like a sales area, and then the shop or warehouse, where there's generally some noise, certainly, but there's dust, there's debris that comes into the sales area as a result of doors or windows being opened and the flow of air going through, pushing all of that up to the front. And over days and weeks, there's particulate that's in the sales area that they want to keep in the shop, and people will literally say, I want interlocking weather stripping for that. So now we've got an idea of where it will be used. Let's switch to the screen view and let's take a look at this item, supporting documentation, and all their interlocking weather stripping, as I had just mentioned, just so that you can see what it looks like on the jambs and at the header as well in terms of what an interlock is. Let's do that now. If you've not hit subscribe yet, we would very much appreciate if you did, and hopefully you're enjoying this video. Now, let's get back to it. Okay, here is our threshold that we're looking at, the 101, actually it's not the right one. 101PB, polished brass threshold cap. It's listed here in several lengths, 6-inch increments generally, everything from 2 foot to 8 foot. You can probably order this in lengths far longer than 8 foot, but we don't, just for practicality's sake, not list them longer, but know that they're available. So if we look at this typical item, and by the way, speaking of lengths, if you have need for a custom length, indicate that in the comment field at the time of order. And let's say that you needed a threshold that was 40 1/4, a 40 1/2. You would order the next longest length, like this 42, and you would indicate in the comment field, ship this at 40 1/2. Whatever you need it to be. The reason you'll want to do that is because the factory is going to put a reasonably nice edge on this. Okay, This is not polished on the end. That's okay, you're really not going to see it ever. But they're going to cut it anyway, so might as well just let them cut it. Now, here is the cross-section. 5/16 is the height. 1.125 is the width. Available finishes. These are really not only finishes, it's a partial list actually, but it's also base materials. The A, the BDG, the D, and the G, along with black suede powder coat, white suede powder coat, that's all an aluminum-based material. Then that B means architectural bronze or brass, onto which you can leave it mill. And this is what mill looks like. Unfinished. If you order just a plain architectural bronze threshold or a brass threshold and you don't specify any finish, it's assumed per our industry that you want mill. I've had customers call me and say, this is defective, what I received. What do you mean? It's all discolored, streaky. No, that's mill. That's what mill looks like. Well, I need it to be polished. Okay, well, that's no problem. We can definitely get it polished for you. You can send that item back and pay the 40% upcharge, which is generally what it is, about an additional 40% to go from mill to polished. Yeah, you can go from mill to satin. You can go from mill to oil rubbed as well. And there's always an upcharge for that. So be mindful of mill if you're not specifying polished, because if you just searched for the manufacturer's 101B, that's going to be mill. Okay, so we have our cross section. They're not showing the J-hook here. They really should. J-hook included when purchasing the 101 threshold cap. I will have my my team bring that image in here as well as fix this the spelling error that's here. So that's what you're looking at. There's a link here to installation. Not much here at all. Measure twice, cut once. That's the bottom line. But we can do a little bit better than that. So the bottom line here is going to be, you're going to have your little doodad here. Okay. You're going to have your J-hook. You're going to have your door. Okay. What you're going to do. Now, it doesn't have to be like this. I mean, it's going to be like this no matter what. This is going to be the end result. But you could also decide to do something like this as well. You have your door, and you rabbet your door like this, so that you're concealing that hook strip. There's also another advantage to that as well. The advantage is when the door gets unhung later in its life to be sanded, repainted, stained, whatever it is, the possibility of destroying unintentionally the very thin roll-formed material down here by putting the door down after you've removed it from the frame is less, because you've got this rabbeted edge here. So the other point of this is that you are tightening up the margin between obviously the floor and the underside of the door. You know, just imagine it with and without that mortise, or that rabbet, I should say. This is a rabbeted edge, is what that is. That's a rabbet. So you could do it that way. And then there's going to be very small brad nails that are included with this in the J-hook. That J-hook is, I think it's the Pemko 101B. Is that part number? Let's take a look. Pemko 61B. Yeah, it is. 61B is that part number. And this is what will be included. They're always mill. They're never going to polish that or anything. You don't see it ever. And Pemko doesn't really have a deployment of hardware where you actually ever would see it. Meaning this nested hook is indeed used in methods of interlocking weather stripping, but not by Pemko. I might have to bring in another manufacturer's catalog, and I think I'm going to do that. Just for the sake of showing you something. Anyway, we'll get to that. So that's what that looks like. Let's go back to those images. Let's look at all of them. I'm trying to show a cross-section, a little bit of the finish, close up. That's just, this is a 6-inch sample piece if you've not gathered that yet. So it's, you know, the fact that it's got this gouge here, it's a sample piece for the purposes really of this video. The back edge, the fluted top, that's nice to have. Anti-slip is kind of what it is, the point. That's a good look there. The trying to show the finish, even though it's bled out a bit because of the lighting. The underside, we looked at that mill finish. A pixelated picture of what the hook strip looks like. Then your fasteners. You will get screws for the threshold cap, and you will get brad nails for the hook strip. Now, let's look. Now, there is a link below this video, as seen here, to the manufacturer's catalog. And when you click on that, you'll be able to pull up the manufacturer's page. You'll see not only all of the Pemko products we sell by means of this horizontal navigation, but also a link to the manufacturer's website, as well as a link to the catalog. The catalog is 300 plus pages of all things weather stripping related. And as we scroll through here, just searching for 101, well, there's a lot of things that are 101 in here, clearly. But if you continue to search, you will find the threshold cap. The point of that process or exercise is it will get you to the area in the catalog that shows you what they call residential thresholds. That also means for us interlocking thresholds. And one deployment I really love is adding that solid brass drip cap out here. This is really what we just shown. If you want to belt and suspender yourself or do it really, really nice, drip caps are incredibly effective at preventing the collecting of water right at the front of your threshold. It hits that, let's say if it does hit the door, rolls down and then away. And you can get drip caps from Pemko in the solid brass or architectural bronze as well. They're apparently not in this section of the catalog. Let's take a look just to show you what that part number is, because I don't recall what it is. I think it's a 3-digit number. There is, as I'm scrolling through here to find it, there is something important to note about these drip caps as well. I think the part number is 345. 346 is the bigger drip cap. You wouldn't use this at the bottom of a door. Yeah, it's 345. 345 is the part number for the drip cap that is being shown in that image that I just, on the page that we landed on. There it is. So here's your drip cap. Finishes B. Okay, proven to be really effective. Now the issue with the drip caps is depending on whether or not the door is in swing or out swing, you're probably going to have to notch the drip cap. So you'll want to be mindful about what work will need to be done when it shows up. This kind of illustrates the concept here. Your threshold's going to run the entire width of the opening, but your drip cap can't, because the stop of the frame is going to be here when you have an in-swinging opening. If you have an outswing, probably not going to have any trouble with needing to cut it down. But you will have to either adjust the net length in relationship to the door size and to the opening size, or you'll have to notch it cut it in the field before you install it. I would prefer that the factory cut everything, because then they'll position the screw holes at a reasonable distance from the end and the center to center as well. So that's another great idea. Back to the interlocks, you can see that there are other interlocks here. So if you're not really sure, if you're on the one that you need, take a look at the other profiles of what they sell. These are all other different interlocks, a couple pages worth. You can see that there is a brass version of one that's a bit more square. I don't have an opinion about this design versus this design. I might prefer this design. This might be a dust trap over time inside of here. You will see that there are different hook strips. There's the L hook, or the 66, and the J hook. You can also do the L hook in the sense that you may not want to unhang the door. You may not want to go through the botheration of doing that. So what you could do in this instance is surface mount that L hook. Okay. And then you screw it in here. That's how that's done. You could do that. I've had people say, I want to do it, but I can't take my door off the hinges. This is a one-person job. I can't get the door off. So, okay, great. Use an L hook. Then you don't have to get anything underneath here. And that would work as well. Okay. Good stuff. Let's wrap up this video on camera. If you've not hit subscribe yet, we would very much appreciate if you did, and hopefully you're enjoying this video. Now, let's get back to it. I did want to bring you the information regarding the other interlocking weather stripping that is sold. Let's start with Pemko, and I want to show you other brands' weather stripping, and then we'll discover if they have other options. Yeah. Yeah, they actually do. Okay, good. I didn't want to bring in another manufacturer. I almost never do that. So, L metal, 41M and 43. L metal. What's that used for? You also have V cushion. That's not interlocking. In bronze, you've got spring bronze and you've got V cushion. They're both very common. This would come in a roll. These are in lengths. Generally, they're nailed on. Sometimes people ask for a pressure-sensitive adhesive. I think that's an awful idea long term, but it can be accommodated if you want that. Now, the L angles, what is that used for? Well, where it's used is here. To go back to our drawing, I guess we'll just leave that there. Let's do this. You'll have a You're going to have a door. Direction of swing. So that L angle material that was on their catalog, they're both the same. One just has a longer leg to it, but they would both work in our example. So you could take an L angle, you can nail it to the jamb, you'll attach it here in a slot that you would cut in the edge of the door. Over here, what you would do is you would take an L angle here. You could take an L angle here and have those interlock together. That would certainly work. You might also want to do something more like here. Let's take a look. How would we want to do that? Shown a bit out of scale here, but you could interlock it like this as well. You know, that sort of interlock idea. The issue with that's going to be is you're going to need, yeah, no, that would work. You could do something like that, because that door swings in that direction. The hinge is over here, actually. This is where the hinge is. So that's where the interlock is used. These are awful sketches, but it'll give you the concept. And you would do this on the hinge side. You do this at the header and the strike side, and then of course you would then have your interlock at the bottom of the door. So that's where you'd use that stuff. All right, let's wrap up this video on camera. If you've not hit subscribe yet, we would very much appreciate if you did, and hopefully you're enjoying this video. Now, let's get back to it. Okay, in conclusion, this is the Pemko 101B. If you have any questions on this 101B in a polished brass finish, the finishes would be mill. We discussed that. You can do satin brass, you can do polished brass, you can do oil rubbed. Technically, because it's made of solid bronze, you can do anything on it. You can certainly powder coat it. You could plate it as well. Why would you powder coat something like this? Well, the only reason, if you wanted black, well, they can powder coat aluminum. It would be substantially less expensive. But the reason someone might want solid brass or architectural bronze is its sheer durability. If you're building an $8 million house, you're not necessarily using aluminum. If you have a door opening that there will be thousands of people going through that opening on a daily basis, think a city hall of a major city, aluminum's not going to survive. You're going to need something made of brass, something far more durable. That would be why you might consider that. You might just want the look of brass. There is absolutely no substitute for it. Now, I did want to show you the fasteners. These are screws that you're going to get with the threshold cap. They're probably number 10 by maybe 1 inch. Phillips drive, wood screws. These are non-ferrous, which you would expect them to be. My point is, yeah, they're brass. Those, not so much. That's okay. These are so small. Pardon me, they're so thin. You're probably going to destroy a whole mess of them just trying to get them installed, driven through the 16 thousandths of an inch hook strip is the bottom line. So that would be okay on that. Now, why would you want one made of brass rather than the other option for base material, aluminum? This material is substantially more expensive. You can do different finishes, as we've talked about, different anodized finishes on aluminum. You can powder coat aluminum. You can do different finish processes on solid bronze or brass. You can also powder coat this as well. But why would you powder coat this? I don't know that you really would, because you would powder coat aluminum. But the people that use solid brass, regardless of the finish, is its durability, number one, and the logic might be you're building an $8 million home, you're probably going to use thresholds that are commensurate to the value of the property. You're building a $30 million home. You know, nowadays that's if you look around, you'll bump into those. So sheer durability, and then commensurate with the project, the scope of the project. Durability, if you have very high traffic volume doors, like the front doors of City Hall in Chicago, they have solid bronze thresholds and have for decades. It's the last scene, basically, of the Blues Brothers, you know, where they're running into the big building to pay the tax collector. Those are bronze doors that they're running through. Those doors are still there. Those thresholds are still there. Why? Because of the durability of bronze. So, is this material a fortune? It is. Will it last a century? Absolutely. Aluminum will absolutely not give you the same sort of performance that you'll get out of something like this. Plus, because it's brass, you can obviously polish it. That's what this is. Now, this has a lacquer on it. That's typical. You may not want a lacquer. You can order this unlacquered, where they will polish it and then be done with it. There's a high-end hotel here in town. They have brass thresholds on the exterior doors, and they are always polishing them. They're not They're polishing them to keep them looking like this, but they don't have lacquer on them, because otherwise you wouldn't really have the ability to polish that because you've got lacquer. So you would definitely want to order that unlacquered. But satin brass, mill brass, polished brass, lacquered, unlacquered, oil rubbed. Because it's brass, you could plate it as well. If you wanted to have someone plate this polished chrome, you could. You could. It's made of brass. So the name Pemko is extremely synonymous with weather stripping. You can dive into their catalog and see more solutions in a single catalog than you will find from any other manufacturer. So if you're looking for, if you've got a problem, you're looking for a way to solve the problem, but you're really not sure of the approach, it's not a waste of time to just flip through their catalog, because you'll start to see ideas. It's almost a picture book in that sense. And because it's Pemko, they can take any of those shapes and cut them. They can weld them, they can modify them, cut, drill, grind, whatever needs to be done. And we have had custom thresholds made in the past. Not that you may notice it, but large doors into a church, they'll have door closers on them, meaning you'll know the door will close behind you, but you look up and you don't see any evidence of it. It could be concealed in the header, but most likely it's concealed in the floor, and that threshold runs completely long, obviously, the entire width of the opening, but it covers the top of those thresholds. Pardon me, it covers the top of those floor closers. This is why you aren't really seeing those. So the modification of those thresholds is something that they do. Any questions on the 101 in a B base material or any other Pemko product, please feel free to reach out to us. Thank you. Thank you for watching, and if you've enjoyed this video, please click thumbs up. Please subscribe and maybe even send the video to someone that you know. Thank you.